This episode of Locked On MLB is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. And talk about getting started, let's get started with this episode of Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, there's my lower third. You can call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer, easy for you to say, who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade, and I am starting my fifth year as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Locked On MLB Pods. Or you can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube where you can see my just increasingly handsome face. Or you could follow us wherever you get your podcasts and tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On MLB. Or check out some of the other great shows of the Locked On Podcast Network, including, I'm going to pick one at random, Locked On Yankees with Stacey Gotsulias, the very person who dragged me kicking and screaming into the Locked On world, happens to be in the waiting room. Hi, Stacey Gotsulias of Locked On Yankees. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Sully. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I think we're at Tim Wakefield number of days. I think it's 49 days till opening day.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was Mookie Betts, but sadly, Red Sox fans don't celebrate that anymore. But thank God they got under the tax threshold, because that's what fans love, to know that billionaires saved some money. But yeah, this is the season's right around the corner, and I heard you on your last podcast with Paul Holden from Locked On Rockies, and we were saying that it's like, it seems like the World Series just ended, and it also seems like this offseason's gone on forever. It's this wonderful contradiction.
Yeah, it really is. I was thinking about that last week because it feels like Aaron Judge signed so long ago, and now it's like, oh, yeah, no, they're all reporting to spring training next week. How did that happen?
I got to say one thing. Again, this is Locked On MLB, Locked On Yankees crossover. Everyone seems to complain when the World Series bleeds into November. No one's bitching and moaning about the Super Bowl being played around Valentine's Day. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, this is too late. It's too late. We're going to get to the point where the Super Bowl is going to be played in March, and it's going to be, wherever they are, it's going to be 70-degree weather, whether it's the Northeast or Florida.
I mean, yeah, I was about to say, it could open up for other venues. I mean, part of the reason it had to be either, here in Pasadena or in Tempe, Arizona, or wherever, was because, it wasn't snowing. But if we're going to play it late enough, hell, have it outdoor in Minnesota. Why not? What's stopping us?
I do remember when they announced that it was going to be in MetLife, I said on Twitter, watch when it's at MetLife, it's going to be like 55 and sunny. And it was 53 and overcast. I was so
the
close.
Next day.
Yeah,
it was like a blizzard the next day. And I was
so
dying.
Close to the right thing. Yeah.
I was dying for it to be snowing on the cast of The New Girl or whatever, they fill the stands with the celebrities of the TV shows.
Yeah.
This is, of course, best laid plans are going to be thrown away. But I do want to bring this up because you and Paul were talking the other day about, he's fine with the expanded playoffs, and I am as well. But I think that with the expanded playoffs, I think we need to reduce the number of games in the season. I think.
Yeah. Like go back to 154, maybe.
I would go even back to. I would go back to 144. I would. Yeah, for this reasons. One of the reasons why they expanded the playoffs in the truncated season was it was only 60 games. We all know that's not a good of sample size. So you had to open it up a little bit because they make it a little more fair. One of the things that made the randomness of the baseball postseason seem equitable was that so few teams got in. So
Right.
they made it through the gauntlet. So if you had a situation like the Phillies beating the Braves in 1993, or in '96, the Orioles beating a much better Cleveland team to get to the ALCS to play the Yankees, you could deal with that because it took 162 games. I mean, these were the only these teams get in. So
Yeah.
it's easier to stomach. But if we're letting in, the three division winners and three wild card teams, we saw the randomness leading Philadelphia to have a pennant winner. I think it would feel more equitable if, I've been screaming to end the regular season on Labor Day for over a decade. And
Yeah.
so you have the baseball playoffs mainly in September and the World Series the first week of October.
The way it
So
used to be.
yeah, the way,
Yeah.
but then you have August being the pennant run,
Yeah.
and then September being playoff baseball, and then the World Series played in October seems, at least it's being played in baseball weather.
Yeah, because it
You know,
is funny, you and I like talking about games from the past. And when I look at old games from the 80s and I'm clicking on like mid-October and I'm like, oh, it's already like the fourth game of the World Series. I completely forgot that they're
yeah,
still not in the beginning of the National League or American League series, a championship series at this point. They're already almost past the world. Like they're almost crowning a champion at this
yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, when it was just the World Series, remember the playoffs sometimes would start in late September.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at I'm really trying not to be old man Sully here, but I think what this does is I've been saying that August is a wasteland.
It really
If you
is.
have the pennant drive in August and you have September before football really kicks into high gear, a lot of people stop paying attention to baseball around Labor Day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, why are we screaming at the tides?
And it's funny
What?
because I'm the type of person, I don't pay attention to football until
Me neither.
baseball's over.
Well, me neither. But you and I are outliers
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't pay attention to any other sports. I was like,
Right. I
at
don't
this
either.
point,
Yeah.
but we're the outliers on that.
Yeah.
Most people, once people get back to school, once people get back from their vacation, they're focusing on football unless the local team is in there.
Yeah.
Here in LA, New York is a little different because New York is a little more of a baseball city, but like in LA, if the Dodgers aren't in it, no one cares.
Right.
When I was up in
Although
the
that
Bay,
hasn't been a problem the last how many years now?
that's true.
Yeah.
But I've been here when the Dodgers weren't in it.
Yeah.
And but even when they get eliminated, all right, like when it was Atlanta, Houston in the World Series, or getting anyone excited about Houston, Philadelphia in the World Series, just it was non-existent.
Yeah.
Same thing in the Bay Area when every other year the Giants were in the World Series, it was a frenzy, and those other years where they weren't in it, tumbleweeds.
Right.
Get them interested in Royals, Mets. You know, but like I just think that baseball, you know, is a summer sport. Not to paraphrase the mayor in Jaws, they need summer dollars. But I keep going back to 2017 when both the Twins and the Rockies were wild card teams. Now they both got eliminated early, but there
Right.
was the possibility of an outdoor World Series the first week of November in Minneapolis and Denver
Right.
was there. And
Right.
yeah, I wanted to see that. But that's
Yeah,
because
we
I'm
wanted a
me.
snow out during the instead of a rain out, a snow out during the
The,
World Series.
the boys of summer, and they're making a freaking snowman.
Yeah.
Look at we are going to talk Yankees in a second, I think that if you shorten the season, you're going to have fewer injuries. I think you're not going to be, I really think a lot of times those last month or so when you see these teams stagger to the finish line,
Yeah. Oh, they're
it's
exhausted.
they're exhausted, and the rotations, everyone's not, everyone's cutting the pitchers off at 5 innings, so every bullpen is exhausted.
Yeah.
It's not just Jonathan King. Everybody's bullpen is just haggard by the end.
Yeah. It's true.
Yes, yes, of course it's true because I speak the truth. Stacey Gotsulias. And I will just tell you that I think that if they have a shorter season, I think it's I think it's a surefire bet that fans will be super into a pennant drive in August. And, I think you'll have a lot more interest in some stuff.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're making any bets, let me recommend FanDuel. It's our new partner, Stacey Gotsulias. We got a new partner. And the only app you're going to need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about this partner, Locked On, because of the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. There's so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57. That's this year's Super Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just want to make sure. With a no sweat first bet, you'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bet if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Now, FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, super easy to use. Best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Sing that song with me. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
I wasn't told we were supposed to sing
Oh,
during
you
our.
didn't get the sheet music?
Mm-mm.
I was going to get the little, little tuning thing there.
Yeah.
Stacey Gotsulias is here from Locked On Yankees, and we're all better for it. The AL East, I think this is the third year in a row where I'm going to pretty much say the same thing about the American League East, and that is I think it's going to be a scrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last year was now I have to give, and this is not easy for me to say.
Mm-hmm.
I have to give the Yankees credit because, again, they won 99 games. They won the division by a week. They had 7 games. They had a week buffer, which
Yeah.
meant they could line everything up. And they had a first half of the season where they were on pace to say 1998. Ha! We're the greatest Yankee team of all time. But nobody thought that, and everyone knew they were going to come to earth. They had that really lousy
August.
6-week stretch pretty much from the All-Star game to the end of August.
Yeah.
And then pretty much from the series where they beat up the Twins around Labor Day to the end of the year, they basically were the team that everyone thought they were going to be.
Right.
Which was a pretty good team, definitely a playoff team, flawed, but I thought they were going to win like 93 games. And if they played like they did in September, that's probably what they were going to win. They just had such a great first half where everything went right.
Yeah.
So going into this year, I have my thoughts of what I think, but I want to hear without me sullying, if you will, your point of view. Tell me what you think about them and their thoughts going into this year.
Well, it's weird because I joked about it with Paul on the show the other day that when we did our AL East roundtable last year, most of us picked the Blue Jays to win the AL East, and we figured that it would be Blue Jays and then Rays, Yankees, Red Sox kind of bunched up, and then no one expected the Orioles to do what they did. I mean,
Right.
No. And the way that it worked out and the way it finished, the Yankees did luck out from that start because they lucked out because the Blue Jays were pretty much mediocre for the first half of the year. And then they picked it up toward the end and made things interesting. If the Blue Jays played the way people thought they were going to play in the first half of the season, it would have been a different story. The Yankees still would have been as good, but they probably wouldn't have done as well against the Blue Jays as they did because, toward the end, the Yankees were beating up on them pretty much until a certain point. And they finished
Right.
11-8 against them, which is
Yeah.
nothing to sneeze at. But I feel like going into this year, I'm disappointed that they didn't make more moves. Obviously Judge coming back is big, getting Rodon is big. The hole in left field kind of scares me, but not really, because they can go from within. And then if things don't work out, and there's, the Yankees aren't going to be bad. They'll
No.
just be going into the All-Star break, and they'll have the option to maybe trade for a left fielder if things aren't working out the way they want them to. And I think Cashman said that too, during the off season. He kind of gave us a hint that they weren't really going to go after a left fielder during the off season, was talking about down the road, maybe a trade will happen. So,
Yeah.
I'm not terribly disappointed, but I was really hoping that the sweep against the Astros would have lit a bigger fire under their collective rear end. And it was big enough for them to get Rodon, but I was kind of hoping they'd be like, you know what? We have Steve Cohen outspending us by all this money. Who cares about the luxury tax? Let's go after someone big for left field. And they didn't do it. So that was slightly disappointing. But seeing how they did last year, seeing how certain people stayed healthy, seeing how certain people didn't stay healthy, and if they do stay healthy in 2023, it could be just as good or close to as good as they were in 2023. I mean, the rotation is frightening if everyone stays healthy and people pitch the way they think they're going to pitch. I mean, a top three of Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, and Nestor Cortez.
Right. By the
yeah.
way, I need to ask this question because I honestly don't remember. Because sometimes, sometimes in the off season, especially come spring training, there's more like, oh my God, I didn't know he signed with that team. Like, it's you get reminded. Is Tyon back?
No, he's with the Cubs.
He's with the
He
Cubs.
signed a 4-year,
Okay.
$68 million deal with the Cubs. Yeah.
I have the page that I think Tyon signed with the Cubs, but am I
Yeah.
wrong? Because there's sometimes there are players like that, like fold within the same, like, you forget. Wait, did he do it or that's okay?
Yeah.
I'm not going crazy. Tyon is
No, you're
gone. Okay,
not in this instance. You're not going crazy.
okay, well, okay, but I'm going to be positive, and then I'm going to be not negative, but have my skepticism. The positive is the nanosecond if Judge had gone, this would have been a disaster.
Oh, sure.
Because obviously Judge had a historic year last year. He also was the only person playing well during that slump.
Right. He played well the whole year. Yeah.
I mean, beyond his stats, obviously Shohei Ohtani is an all-star pitcher and an all-star player. You have to be a historic level player to wrestle it away from. Guess what? Someone was.
Right. Because it wasn't just the home runs. When he wasn't hitting home runs, and he was going, I think the most he went was 9 games without home run. But when he wasn't hitting home runs, he was hitting doubles. He was hitting singles. He was driving people in. That's why his average was as high as it was. Because
his on-base percentage was in the 400s.
Yeah. I mean, he was unbelievable last year.
He was carrying the damn team.
He really was, on his big, brawny, 282-pound back.
And, and you consider that, yes, Stanton played well at times. He did, but for the most part, he had a down year.
Yep.
Rizzo, again, hit some big home runs down the stretch and everything. Torres did well at some point, but nobody else. I don't look at any of the players in that entire lineup and say, that's an elite, at any point.
Right.
And, Donaldson was a mess. Kiner Falefa should have been DFA'd. And you got a LeMahieu had a disappointing, year, and Hicks was hurt for a big chunk of the time. There is a player who is not an acquisition this year, but kind of is, which is Harrison Bader.
Yeah.
And that you're going to have, Bader. What did he play? Like one game? How many games of the regular season did he play?
It wasn't
like
many.
A week and a half. It was like 10 games or something.
But he was impactful. He
was playing 14 games for them.
Yeah, but he was impactful right off
in the
bat.
playoffs. He was great.
Yeah,
he was fantastic.
I was talking about it with, who was I talking about this with? Jason Buford was a guest on my show. He writes for Rolling Stone and other publications. And he was saying, it's so nice to watch a center fielder actually set his feet before the ball comes to him.
Yeah.
He's like, it's been a long time since the Yankees have had someone that good playing defensively in center field. He's like, he's a pleasure to watch. I said, yeah, in those in that small sample size, I was like, if we see a full season of healthy Harrison Bader, because he doesn't have to hit home runs, he can just slap singles, and as long as he gets on base and runs around, it's perfect.
You saw what you were going to get with him in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's
If you
gonna be
get that
fun.
first season, that's like an acquisition. You're going to
Yeah,
have him for a full year.
yeah,
So that, I mean, I don't discount that as a positive.
right.
Um, and I also really don't discount Rodon.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think Rodon is necessarily a Cy Young contender and everything, but he's a damn good pitcher.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
And Garrett Cole is a very good pitcher. And Cortez, again, if we're seeing that that wasn't a fluke, we saw that the year before wasn't a fluke. So now we can sort of say, okay, he's now put together 2 solid seasons. So, you go 1, 2, 3, very good. And so now Severino, who did legally change his name to, if healthy, Luis Severino,
yeah,
you're not asking Severino to be your number 2 or 3 starter.
right.
I mean, that's why the Rodon signing, whether he's the all-star or just a very good pitcher, you're you're taking that pressure off of Severino. So
Yes.
these moves are not in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Having Bader for the full season, all right, I'm not sure we have in left field. You have Bader in center and Judge in right. You could find Joe Bag of Donuts to play left field, get someone who is non-tendered, bring someone up from Scranton. I almost said Columbus. And I think that, or someone's going to jettison a left
Well,
fielder
they have
that come to
Oswaldo
trade.
Cabrera. They
Yeah,
had him playing out there, and they had him
sure.
playing at a bunch of positions. And
And he's watched some YouTube videos about how to play the outfield, so
well,
that,
no,
that should be fine.
my soon-to-be co-host worked with Scranton last year. He did radio for Scranton last year, and he
Mhm.
said between Oswaldo Cabrera and Oswald Peraza, the two of them are two of the most chill people you'll ever meet in your life, and they're just how you see them on the field. And Oswaldo Cabrera is just happy to be there, and he will do whatever he can do to help the Yankees. So he's not a bad option in left
No,
field. I don't mind that at all. It's just I kind of wanted a little more effort from the Yankees, but hey, if they're going to stick him out there and he does well, because he had a bunch of outfield assists when they had him playing different positions, I'm for that.
and that mixed with a full season of Bader,
Hmm.
um, I I I I am impressed by their offseason in that, keeping Bader for the full season, the ripple effect of having another starter that you don't have to worry about.
Right.
I call it the John Garland effect.
Yeah.
You don't need to have him be a star. You just need to know every 5 days he's pitching. You don't have to worry about it.
Plus, Rodon is one of those guys where his velocity gets higher as he goes through, and like through third time through the order, his velocity is like 2 miles an hour higher than it was the first time through the order, and I'm kind of looking forward to that because usually it's the opposite where a guy kind
Right.
of tires out, and the hitters know what to expect from him. But I'm looking forward to watching him work.
And with Judge back, you just know. I mean, it's basically saying this is the centerpiece. They made him the captain. That there's no messing around.
Right.
There's no, they're not going to be,
He set
playing
the record. Now he doesn't have to worry about it. And if he
right.
only hits like 35, 40 home runs, we're fine with it, Yankee
Yeah,
fans, right?
yeah,
Yes, we'll be fine.
absolutely. So you don't have
Hmm.
to worry about that. So now you can just focus on the main thing. Now, I do have a couple things that I have some thoughts about. That's not me being a Yankee hater. It's just me pointing out some reality things. But before we do that, I want to say to you, Stacey Gotsulias, are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories?
Yes. And
What
because I
what
need to stick to my New Year's resolutions. So,
you
yes,
and
tell me more.
you and me both. Well, I get something you probably have never heard of. It's called a Built Bar. For
No,
those
I've
of
never
you,
heard of him.
yeah, if anyone have ever taken a peek at the direct messages amongst all of us hosts, we talk about Built Bars all the time. Now, look,
Mm,
we made it through the holidays, but we have a new gauntlet coming this weekend, which is a double barrel Super Bowl. Oh my God. Big Super Bowl parties, and oh my God, everyone puts out the Valentine's candies at work. You gotta make it through this gauntlet to stay healthier. But if you don't want to compromise on the taste thing, you got to try Built. Built Bar they're actually healthy and they're tasty. They're so delicious. You won't even think that they're good for you. And what makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right. You heard me correctly. Real chocolate. Great flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. I don't know how Built Bar does it. I've asked, they won't tell me. They taste like a candy bar while having great, amazing macros. They're 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of fat, and like Carlos Rodon, their velocity goes up later in the game. Now, you don't have to wait around to get a box. We used to love that, right? Gotsulias, getting that box coming in. It's like, oh, here come our Built Bars. You don't have to do that anymore. You're near a Sam's Club. Head over to Sam's Club or Walmart. Go to Walmart, go to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You pick up a 4-bar box, cookies and cream, double chocolate coconut puffs. Buy Sam's Club, get a 13-bar box. I'm going to eat one of those 13-bar boxes a day. That's good for me, right? Brownie batter, churro. You know what? You can just thank me later. What are your favorite ones?
The cookie dough puff.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
it's
It's
really good.
so good.
It's really good. Yeah.
And it really does taste like you're eating something that's not good for you, because when you bite into it, you think to yourself, how's this possibly healthy for me? It's just too good. But yeah, I think that replaces my mint brownie
Yeah.
yeah.
It's up there for me. I still love the raspberry because I love that the tanginess mixed with the chocolate. It kind of almost has a jelly donut quality to it. That's really fantastic. So,
Right.
but it doesn't matter. No matter. They're great, and go get them. Go to Sam's Club. Go to Walmart, or keep ordering them in. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but I am going to tell you what to eat, and that is Built Bar. And Stacey, sing it with me. Built Bars. They're still good. All right.
I'm not singing.
Okay, fine. Don't.
I sing on my own show sometimes, but I'm not.
I know
singing
you do.
tonight.
That's why I thought I could bring you in. But I got to sing in the sheet music.
Yeah.
We're with Stacey Gotsulias. Let me tell you, there are two things that would make, if I were a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine that scenario. If I were a Yankee fan, yaddle daddle 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 dum. That's right. I played Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. I was the greatest Irish Italian Tevye in the history of high school musicals.
I think my parents went to see Fiddler on the Roof during a date night, if I'm not mistaken. My mom told me. And
Well, it's a great
yeah.
show. It's a
Yeah.
great show, and I was a great Tevye. But here are the two things that make me nervous. First of all, and we alluded to this a little bit, that last year the Blue Jays first half, they were thoroughly mediocre.
Yeah.
And they started playing to the back of their baseball card by the second half. And they've made, granted, the Teoscar Hernandez trade, which Ruth Capulis is still grinding her teeth over. But they fortified their pitching staff.
Yep.
In a way that they did. Obviously, when we saw in the Mariners, when they came from behind in that insane clinching game, they needed to fortify their staff, and they did exactly that. And if just a couple of those players, like Guerrero, just start to play closer to what we're expecting, a lot of things went wrong, and they were still a 90-something win team last year.
Right.
The Tampa was decimated with injuries. The team that lost to Cleveland in the wild card series, it was a mash unit. I mean, I didn't know who half the players were. Some of them were younger than my sons. But they still made the playoffs.
Right. And they're getting Glasnow back.
They're getting Glasnow back, and they're bringing back, like, they re-signed Yandy Diaz. They've kept a couple players, like, hey, we're going to keep a couple of these players. We're going for it. Thinking they're closer to the team that won 100 games in 2021 than they are the team that sort of stumbled and bumbled their way into the playoffs last year. And so the competition, I don't think you can get that 7-game buffer. The Red Sox are a mess, and the Orioles are shooting themselves in the foot after a year where they won their fans back. Now they're doing everything in their power to alienate them. But I still think it's going to be a 3-team race. And I think the Yankees could very well win. But the thing that I would be nervous the most about is the bullpen. Because you got a great first half out of Clay Holmes.
Yeah.
And the history of baseball is littered with guys who had one really good year as a closer and then fizzled out. No offense to Clay Holmes, who is a talented pitcher and has been a good reliever for a few years. The idea of him being an all-star closer again, he was thoroughly mediocre the second half.
Yeah. I'd still prefer to have mediocre Clay Holmes over Aroldis Chapman.
Well, yeah, but that's not, you don't have to, he's now being his awful self with Kansas City right now.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
King was great when he was healthy, when he was pitching. But like the first half, their bullpen depth was fantastic.
yeah.
And it
Well,
was
yeah,
it was
losing Michael,
fine the second half,
no,
but
but
it
losing
wasn't
Michael
great.
King was I think that was the biggest blow. I mean, Chad
Mhm.
Green also,
Yeah,
because he was hurt too, but Michael King was a really big blow to the bullpen when they lost
yeah.
him. And just the way it happened, you were thinking the absolute worst with the way his arm looked when they were taking him off the field, because you could tell right away when he threw the pitch something horribly went wrong. Um, but they're expecting him to be back. He might miss a little bit of
Mhm.
this first part of the season, but it's not like they're expecting him to come back in July. So,
Right.
um, yeah, the bullpen is a little questionable, but the rotation with those top three and Severino, if healthy, at four. You also have guys like Clark Schmidt. You
Yeah.
also have Domingo Herman. Like Schmidt can even be in the bullpen if you need him to be, where you can have Herman as an extra starter if you need him to be there. Um, I'm not that worried yet. And then
Okay.
that's another thing. Maybe if the Yankees by the All-Star break, the bullpen is kind of sputtering a bit, and if someone is out there, maybe they can do a trade before the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see what
I
happens. Chad Green's with the Blue Jays, but he's
Right.
coming back from surgery, and
Did he
it's
pitch at all last year? I think he only
yeah,
pitched like.
yeah, he did.
Okay. I honestly don't remember him
I'm
pitching
trying
last
to
year.
remember when he got hurt because the beginning of the
Oh, I
2022
have it up here.
season.
He pitched like 14 games. What?
Yeah, I mean
Harrison
he was
Harrison Bader played 14 games. Chad Green pitched. What is it with these 14-game Yankees here?
yeah,
Unbelievable. Well,
right.
you made a great point there, and maybe this has something to do with it. Is that you by strengthening your rotation, it puts less pressure on the bullpen. Hey, by the way, I said like I couldn't remember. I thought James and Tyon signed, but I couldn't quite remember. Is Frankie Montas still on the team?
Yes,
Doesn't
yes.
that say a lot that we've been talking for half an hour and going in depth in the pitching staff, and his name hasn't come up
It's
once.
because I forgot. Like I was in my head as I was naming everyone. I'm like, there's another. Who am I? I'm forgetting someone. Who am I forgetting? Thank you for bringing that up. He would be the number five, and that's not a bad number five to have if he stays healthy. Because his problem is the shoulder, and he's going to miss the first. I think they said month of the season.
Mhm.
So if he can come back and, if they use him as a number five, that takes pressure off him as well, because I know it's a big deal coming over from the A's to the Yankees, but if you're coming over from the A's to the Yankees and they're not expecting you to be the ace,
Yeah,
it shouldn't be so bad for the guy.
and
So I'm just hoping when he comes back, he remains healthy, because he's another one. If he's healthy, him and Luis Severino, if he's healthy,
he was
that's
a
not a
good
bad
pitcher
number
in
five to
Oakland.
have.
He
Yeah.
was a good pitcher in Oakland, and I'm going to say something. A lot of times, people who were good pitchers and maybe coming back, a lot of times those starting pitchers turn into decent relievers.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the biggest example of that would be someone like Andrew Miller went from a struggling starting pitcher to an all-star
He was
caliber
great. I
reliever.
loved him. I did.
Yeah.
I loved him when he was on the Yankees. He was
I
great. And
loved
I
him when he
also
was on the
loved
Red
him
Sox, and it was when he was with Cleveland. Yeah.
I loved him when he was on Cleveland and he gave up that home run to Greg Bird in 2017. That was great.
It's terrible, terrible. We
Great.
all we all
Oh,
cried.
the only
We
run of the
all
game
cried.
too. The
We
only
all
run of the
cried.
game, and unbelievable. Of all people for Greg Bird to hit a home run off of. It's like
And if I'm not mistaken about that game, because the Yankees lost the first two games, including the game, the come from behind game.
yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken about that game, maybe I'm mixing up games 3 and 4 in 2017.
Yeah, I always
But
conflate them as well. Yeah.
one of the games, Judge leaped up and stole a home run,
Mhm. Yeah, I
and
can't
I
remember which
think
one that was.
I think that was the 1-0 game.
Yeah.
Because if that ball went a little higher, all of a sudden the chances are Cleveland, who I thought were rampaging to the World Series that
Yeah.
year.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because I went to a double header They played like a quick 3-game series, and then like one of the games was rained out, so they had to do a doubleheader. And I was at a doubleheader, and Cleveland just beat up on the Yankees like the very end of August.
Mhm.
And so when I saw them matched up against them in the playoffs, I was like, oh yeah, there's no way the Yankees are going to win this series. And then especially with the way they lost game 2, I just thought, could you
Yeah.
just win one game? Just win one game. Don't get swept. That's all I wanted. And
Yeah.
then, game 5 happens, and still can't believe that happened. Thank you, Didi
Neither
Gregorius.
do I. Yeah.
But
Against
yeah,
Corey Kluber of all people.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird too
It
because
was so sad. It was so sad.
I Didi hit that first home run, and anxious my anxiety, I was just like, "Ugh," I was like, "Oh my god, they're gonna win this game." That was after the first home run. I just became so calm. I'm like, "No, they're winning this game. I'm feeling it right now." And then when he hit the second home run, I was like, "They're really gonna win this game. I can't believe this is happening." And from then on,
Yeah.
completely calm the whole rest of the game. Now, Brett Gardner's at bat was a little nerve-wracking just because it was like 12 pitches.
Yeah.
But oh man, I missed the 2017 team was so much fun because no one expected them to get as far as they did.
Aren't those teams amazing? I was talking to someone about. I mean, for me, it was the '99 Red Sox.
Yeah,
That I mean, they wound up losing, and some Sox fans were talking about the blown calls, but they also Red Sox just they were Pedro and cross your fingers,
right.
in the rotation. But because of that, and again, similar Game 5, they were down 2-0 to Cleveland, and they went into Game 3 with Pedro and Nomar hurt, like this is not even a team anymore,
Right.
and they somehow won those 2 games, and it was our Didi Gregorius was Troy O'Leary.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
Troy O'Leary hit a grand slam, and it was either a 2 or 3 run home run and both times they walked Garcia Parra to get to him
Mhm.
because again they had lots of players like
He took it personally.
they had lots of players
Yeah.
who could mash as platoon players like Mike Stanley or Troy O'Leary or Reggie Jefferson, but Nomar was the only legitimate star in that lineup.
Right.
No offense, John Valentin. And they kept pitching around Nomar,
Yeah.
and Troy O'Leary kept homering off of him. And that was the game where Pedro came out of the bullpen and threw 6 no-hit innings out of the bullpen to clinch it. And if they could have not used Pedro in that game, Pedro could have pitched one of the opening games at Yankee Stadium
Right.
instead of being only used in Game 3.
And
That's
that
why
would have totally changed the series because that's the only game the Red Sox won.
I remember that. I mean, of course, I loved that team because I was so overachieving, like the 2017 team
Yeah.
for you guys. And I just remember that ALCS thinking, if you could win just one game at the Bronx and know that Pedro's pitching Game 3, so like worst case scenario, it's 3-2 Yankees going back to the Bronx, where you kind of maybe you pitch Pedro in short rest or whatever it is, but like there was like you got to win one of these 2 games and there's a shot. And they were up 3-0 in that first game, and then went into extras and Bernie homered. And then I don't know if you remember this, but in Game 2, it was Varitek and it may have been O'Leary. I can't remember who the other one was. Both hit balls that hit the top of the wall
Mm.
that would have been a game-tying home run, and neither one of them got driven in. And twice that happened in the same game. If those were a little bit higher.
Yeah.
But, then Bernie hit the walk-off in Game 1, and in my heart, I knew, oh, that was the one. That was the game. That was the game they had the shot at. And then, and of course, I probably said this, everyone, just bear with me, but Mendoza killed the Red Sox that year. Absolutely killed them. There was 2 games where they used him instead of, and Mendoza closed the series out.
Yeah, he did. I watched that game the other day.
They couldn't hit him. And,
Yeah.
and El Duque won the MVP, but I kept thinking it should have been Mendoza. I know Mendoza only got 8 outs the whole series, but they were the biggest 8 outs of the series. And when he came over and he didn't pitch well for the Red Sox, when he played for the Red Sox, there were Red Sox fans saying he's a sleeper cell.
Oh yeah, we called him the embedded Yankee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I may have told you this story already, but it does crack me up that El Duque was a Red Sox killer. He was the MVP of that series. He pitched in that clinching game, he was unbelievable. And he always, he was a Red Sox killer, and he was the only Yankee of that era that I kind of liked
Right.
because he was mysterious.
Yeah.
There was something. El Duque had an undeniably cool quality to him,
Yeah.
and that, like, he just had his cap down. No one really knew how old he was, so he had that Satchel Paige quality to him,
And the leg kick.
the leg kick,
Yeah.
and that he turned it on in October. Like, he was
Yep.
okay, but when come October, El Duque, showed up,
Yeah.
and he was always like, "Oh God, I can't deal with El Duque." If I told you the story, forgive me. I'm watching the '05
Oh, White
and
Sox?
the White Sox
Yeah.
series, and the Red Sox got their butts kicked in game one, and then they lost because of a error in game two, and the one-run game. But I'm thinking, all right, this is no problem, no problem. Down 2-0, no problem. Win game three. Schilling's going to pitch game four. Roll the dice in game five. Okay, and that this is the series that the White Sox took the lead. Manny hit a pair of home runs. They loaded the bases in a one-run game. I'm like, here we go. Here we go. Place one. Bases loaded, nobody out, down by one. Obviously, at least the game's going to be tied.
Mm-hmm.
And Guillen calls to the pen. I forget who the starter was. I'm just going to assume it was Freddie Garcia. Goes to the pen, and out came El Duque.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot El Duque was on the White Sox.
Yeah.
And I thought, you're not allowed to do that. You can't just bring in a Yankee at this point. And it was like that scene in Slapshot when Paul Newman looks up and he sees the team they're playing. They stacked it with all these ringers. I said, "You're not allowed to bring in El Duque." And
Mm.
what does El Duque do? He gets the pop up, and then the check swing from Johnny Damon. If they called it not a swing, it would have been a game tying walk. But instead, they called strike three. And I remember thinking, of course it's El Duque. Of course it's El Duque.
Freaking Duque. Yeah.
Yep. So there you go. It always goes, whenever you and I get together, it always goes back to these kind of memories. But that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. I didn't mention the year before, though.
Do not.
I didn't. I praised the Yankees. I said they had a good off season. I think. Okay. Truth be told, truth serum. I am leaning towards Toronto
Yeah.
because I think they way underachieved last year,
Yeah.
and I think they're. I think it's like one game or two games is going to separate the two.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's going to be, I think it's going to be one of those, unless something disastrous happens to either team, but I think it's going to be, it might be similar to the Yankees and the Orioles, the way they battled down the stretch in 2012.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
That whole last month was just
And then they faced off in a
in
really
the division
underrated
series.
division series,
Yeah.
which was a really exciting division series.
Yep.
Which, by the way, featured the last ever Yankee postseason clinching with a complete game.
Oh,
CC
yeah.
Sabathia threw
CeCe.
a complete game victory then, but
Yeah.
because that was the year Rivera was hurt. Remember?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. Soriano
Okay,
was the
I
closer.
think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
I remember
yeah,
it well.
we remember it well. Yes, we remember it all well. And do you know what? I want to just thank everybody here listening for making Locked On MLB your first listen every single day. Unless, of course, you're one of the Locked On Yankee listeners. And thank you for making Locked On Yankees first listen every day. Make the other one your second listen, and then your third listen, because we know you're listening. Go listen to Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby, who's going to be on the show next week. He's a prospect encyclopedia. He's going deep on the MLB stars. So tomorrow it's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And talking about free and available and getting your podcasts, Stacey Gotsulias, where can people follow your show?
Locked On Yankees is available on every single podcasting platform available. You can follow us at Locked On Yankees, all one word, on Twitter. We're also on Instagram. I'm going to get back to posting on Instagram. And I was thinking of making a Locked On Yankees TikTok, so stay tuned for that, because that could be funny.
Well, look at by the way, under my subscriptions, see that?
Very nice.
Right next to Never Not Funny, which is my favorite podcast, and my own podcast. So look at that. I am a subscriber. I subscribe. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And please subscribe to us on YouTube. We're trying to get 1 billion followers. We're several hundred million short. Talking to Stacey Gotsulias, and like we do, we get a little bit off the rails. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Yankees crossover for, let's just call it the 10th day of February 2023. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging you to call me Sully.